Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode 89 of the Thoughtium Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. I am Anthony Ewing, your host, as always, and we will introduce our guest in just one moment here. But I wanted to make sure that we welcome all of our communities into the Navigating Now virtual roundtable. Those folks who are tuning in via LinkedIn, we want to particularly thank you for joining, stopping by, saying hello, dropping a comment in chat. We also go live to YouTube and Facebook each week, Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. So we just love the community that we're building here at Navigating Now. As always, our role in bringing this show to you on a week-to-week basis is bringing new discussions with new leaders on topics that matter most to us in business, week over week over week. And this week is no different. We are bringing a new guest to the virtual roundtable, Jim Lee. Jim is the founder of Stratfi, and he's going to tell you all about his work as a futurist, as an investment advisor, and also as an organizer of his own communities of both clients and friends that he works with on a regular basis. Jim is also a very special part of the Thoughtium community, in that he's a part of our first Create the Space NFT cohort. And we're going to talk a little bit about that connection there. So much to talk about. And Jim, thank you so much for joining the discussion today.
Great. It's wonderful to have this conversation because we met very serendipitously about a month ago, and we've been talking ever since. So why don't we start with that?
I totally agree. I've told this story over and over. And if it's not a story in serendipity, it's a story in just the power of small business networks. And, you as a small business owner and myself as a growing entrepreneur, you put us in a room and there's just so much to talk about. And somehow we just managed to find each other throughout our own networks or our own communities. Or in this case, a little bit of a brainchild of the Thoughtium brand in our Create the Space dinner and NFTs. Before I get into those details, I almost, Jim, want to hear your perspective of how you tuned into or tapped into the Thoughtium community. Let's talk about where it all began.
It was purely accidental. Okay, so I'm a futurist by training, and people are starting to travel again. So there was a conference, a foresight gathering in Houston that I wanted to go to. And futurists are always into sort of like the next new thing, as it were. And the cost of admission to this event was to either create or purchase a non-fungible token, an NFT, right? Which is like the new thing. It's the bright, shiny new toy in cryptocurrency. And I've been involved in cryptocurrencies since like 2017, like 5 or 6 years, right? Never did an NFT. So I'm like, okay, we got to get real about this. So I got onto OpenSeas, which is the platform, one of the larger platforms for non-fungible tokens. And most of it's like cartoony stuff, like avatars for your profile on Twitter or whatever. And I saw this NFT for like management consulting, and I'm like, this is the only management consulting NFT I see here. It's linked to an event that happened like 2 or 3 months ago. We're going to give this a shot. And I connected and I said, okay, I'm going to send this guy an email and we're going to have a conversation and see where this thing goes. And that's what happened. I paid, this was, by the way, the best penny I ever spent. I'll confess. I did a sort, in terms of from inexpensive to expensive, because I was just playing around trying to figure this thing out. And it was 1 penny for the opportunity to speak. And then I paid like $35 in transaction fees, right? Just to make that happen, on Ethereum. And, we connected and here we are. So you've been wonderfully helpful for my business, and I appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you, Jim. And, the other side to this was the way that, we experienced you come into our community. We would have never in a million years thought that, our NFT project would be would be landed upon in the way that you did, which was just a general search on the open NFT marketplace. Of course, your search was more lowest to highest, which I think is just so ironic that we could possibly be the least
The
or
most
the most cost
underpriced.
effective.
Yes,
Yes, the most
right.
underpriced NFT on the marketplace. I
Yeah, yeah,
thank
yeah.
you, Jim. That's the
Truly,
right way of
truly.
saying
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Mhm.
Exactly. But at the same time, the spirit of the Create the Space NFT program is to build community in organic ways. And the program was designed specifically to bring leaders together to go deep in conversation on topics that we're not able to necessarily on a day-to-day basis with maybe even our colleagues or our extended community. And the NFT then becomes a bit of a token of that camaraderie. And it also becomes a contractual relationship, if you will, to to tapping into the services and the offerings that we have here at Thoughtium. Now, contract is a very rigid word,
That's a
right?
big word. Yeah, 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 yeah.
It
Right.
denotes almost like a legality or a formality. And the wonderful thing about this NFT technology is that that contract, yes, it exists on the blockchain and it's embedded in the actual NFT, but it can represent something more than just a this for that. It can represent community. It can represent membership. It can represent access. And that's again the real spirit of the Create the Space NFT project. And we are just so thrilled that you came across our NFT, that you decided to purchase it, if you will, for a single penny on the open market, and that you then hopefully were maybe surprised and delighted a bit to know that on the other end of it was community and camaraderie and even
Something
maybe a little
real.
bit of value. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. So
Exactly.
yeah, this is what I refer to as an experience token, where you're
Great.
buying into an experience, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of celebrities are doing this. It could be a meet and greet or a wine and dinner party or something like that. But I was sort of curious, like if I connect with you for management consulting, what happens if I resold this token? Okay. If
Yeah.
like, are you on the hook or am I on the hook? Like, who's on the hook for like
Yeah.
management consulting at this point?
Sure. I love that question. I think what you're getting to, Jim, is the heart of the mechanics of NFT technology. And one of the amazing things about this is in a project like this, when we mint 10 of these every quarter, that means that there are 10 people every quarter that have a year-long relationship with us, formal relationship with us, that gives you access to our consulting services, early access to some of our offerings, open access to Norm and I, as leaders. Um, and at the end of the year, you have the opportunity to either hang on to that NFT because it also represents a nice piece of art that commemorates, the relationship that
Looks
that you
good.
had in the
Yeah.
camaraderie in the community,
Mhm.
or you do have a chance to either sell or gift or donate that to somebody else. And that then almost resets that relationship in a way that somebody else can benefit from the same services. Now, we can also continue to add to the value of this NFT by adding features to the access that you have to us over the years. So if this starts as fairly kind of low fidelity, 10 people in a cohort, some nice coaching, some good discussions, conversations like this, as we grow Thoughtium and our influence grows, it could mean greater levels of access to us. It could mean entrance into a yearly conference that we host with a couple hundred leaders from across the industry. And the legality of this is not there yet, but as a futurist, I know you'll go here with me.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I I see a world where brands are creating these NFT projects that could potentially represent ownership in either the brand or a business. So
Yeah,
you can imagine, an artist
yeah.
or a company, even a brand that is, mints an NFT project, let's say a couple hundred tokens, and it draws people who truly believe in this brand or who want to be in and believe so much in this startup that they want to spend a couple bucks to be a part of this experience in its early stages. And if I'm that brand or that organization in 5 years, when I'm a global brand or I've grown 2, 3, 5, 50x, I then want to pay it back to those quote shareholders, those folks that invested very early on in an NFT project like this, by way of, again, increased access or even ownership, which I just think is fascinating. And it could potentially, in artists' case, you think about a musician, it could take the record label out of the picture.
Yes.
Because they will get their projects and their albums and their concerts will be funded by a small group of folks who invested in their NFT very early on. And the investors in that early project will then benefit from the royalties of the album that all of a sudden, rises the ranks in the charts. So that relationship, it's so much more than just contractual. It really represents, to your earlier point, an experience that you're having with a brand, and in some points, and in some aspects, a relationship or an investment that you've made in a brand or an organization.
Yeah, I think, come to think of it, Radiohead issued an album as an NFT. And everything becomes very peer-to-peer at this point. There is no record label. There is no bank. There is no intermediary. It is person to person, and just a wonderful way of supporting artists overall. Where I think this is going ultimately is you're going to have the emergence of what are called digital twins, where the ownership of a digital asset, such as an NFT, becomes a right to a physical property. And then people will start trading these digital properties fairly freely over different formats such as OpenSeas. And you have liquid markets and fractional shares for things such as real estate. I think that's coming very quickly.
It's coming quickly, and there's some early examples of it, and it's a whole nother episode, but I love to debate the impact that this digital ownership will have on even just like human behavior, how we consume and trade goods. So one real example of this that is occurring today is there's been this huge resurgence in collectible sports cards, like a massive resurgence in the last couple of years, which makes my 6-year-old heart sing, because back in the day,
it's everything you wanted when you were 14.
1,000%, 1,000%. But yet today, we're applying technology in ways that allow people to partake in the collectible marketplace in completely new ways. So today, if you're a 14-year-old and you want to own a LeBron James rookie card, there are platforms that you can go on and you can purchase fractions of a LeBron James rookie card that has been rated and verified and has a certificate of authenticity and sits in a third-party warehouse or safety deposit box, but you own a fraction of that card. And as the metaverse evolves and our digital realm evolves, you will be able to own the digital version of that card in a way that you can showcase it and even potentially trade it, much like a physical asset. But you're only investing in a fraction of it, which makes it more affordable. It makes it more scalable. There are a lot of people, though, that suggest that this could, almost degrade the, kind of human element of collecting and trading. If we have to kind of create these assets,
right, you're no longer going to trade shows and conventions and so forth, and kind of rubbing shoulders with your peers. I can kind of see that as happening overall. But I think the scarcity component, and to a certain degree, the social signaling component that goes with NFTs is one of the reasons why they just kind of blew up last year. Okay. So if you recall, 4 or 5 years ago, there was something called crypto kitties, which were unique sort of digitally bred kittens that you could buy on the Ethereum blockchain, and they literally melted the internet. Okay. They demolished Ethereum for a few months just because they couldn't handle the value. And now with its, I think, Bored Apes Yacht Club, you're sort of signaling to other people that you're a part of this community, this sort of underground thing. And some of that comes from scarcity that doesn't necessarily need to exist, but it's that signaling aspect of ownership and participation, which we're seeing right now.
Yeah. The topic of today's discussion is the power of future visioning. And as much as I love how this conversation almost organically went to a place of, future technologies and their impact on, the way that we commerce and the way that we collect, I almost want to go immediately, Jim, into this discussion that you and I just had. Why is this so important? Why are these discussions so important to have on a regular basis? And maybe you can speak to your work as an investment advisor, or even just the kind of relationships that you have in business. Why a future forward discussion that the content might have nothing to do with the work that's in front of you? Why is that healthy in how we succeed and grow and stretch ourselves as entrepreneurs, as corporate citizens, as members of organizations? Like, why is what you and I just did for us?
Yeah, because this is an enabling technology that has the potential to change everything. Okay.
Right.
And people are talking about the internet, in 2000, the cryptocurrency space, Web 3.0 is where the internet was in terms of user adaptation back in 1998. And the tools aren't quite there yet. We're still kind of figuring it out, but we realize that it can change our relationships, how we shop, how we do things. And I think to a certain degree, people look to futurists to deal with uncertainty, to add a little bit more clarity, to talk about some of these secondary impacts of things that don't directly affect their business yet, but may impact their business at some point in the future.
Yeah, I mean, that was so succinctly put. I'll maybe add to that. These discussions are also uniquely valuable, especially when you're working with a team to create some sort of mission or vision for your organization, because it creates a little bit of what I like to think of as elasticity of thought.
Yes.
And anytime you have to set direction for a team or an organization, and we work in some of the more traditional marketplaces where the same formula has won decade over decade over decade. That is still there still is a real responsibility for us to think outside of those current thought patterns and behaviors and create a bit of elasticity ourselves, because the conversation that you and I just had on Web3 and NFTs, again, may not at all apply to a traditional CPG company that just wants to sell more goods. But at the end of the day, yes, there's an argument that says down the road it will apply. But even if it doesn't, my ability to wrap my brain around these concepts, pull them into the work that we do on a day-to-day basis, and allow them to shape the way that we try and test and iterate within the organization, it's absolutely invaluable. So
I had this weird insight this morning, okay,
yeah.
that success is the enemy. And the reason why success is the enemy, or could be the enemy, because of the comfort that it creates.
Yeah.
And sort of looking at this elasticity, this mental elasticity, I think that's a big part of it. I think another part of it is that if you want to grow, you need to stretch.
Yeah.
And you need to stretch your mind. You need to stretch what you think is even possible.
Yeah. And I want to relate it. I do want to, give folks specific examples of how this works. And I'll relate it back to, again, the cornerstone of our relationship and how we found each other. This NFT project that we've been working on and really diving into this technology was not at all a strategic play to grow top line revenue for Thoughtium. Like it just never was. It actually started as a little bit of a side interest of mine.
Yeah.
And as I got into it and I learned about something completely outside of our line of work that at the time I thought had nothing to do with the impact of our business, I realized that there there are common aspects in something even as nebulous as NFT technology, which most people see it as kind of digital art or even digital pictures of apes
Early. Yeah.
or
Mhm.
kitties. You start to, as you get into it, you start to realize there are common threads that exist in this new and emerging technology in the future that I can pull forward. And for us, through this NFT project, by actually testing and trying, and as you had mentioned, stretching ourselves to
Mhm.
apply NFT technology to a consulting services model, we realize that NFT technology is potentially can reshape or redefine community for us. And this is something that, again, we did not start with this end in mind. We just got into the technology, we got into the learning process. We deferred any judgment we had of how good we needed to be, or we had zero measurements or benchmarks of what success would look like. We committed to the
That's right.
process of learning and being in it. And
Right.
because of that, we've developed a program that enables conversations like this, and ultimately might impact the growth of our firm. Who knows? But it's in the process that we really love.
Well, there's sort of this gray space between
Yeah.
working, learning, and playing around. Okay. And that's just part of having fun. And that's
Yeah.
how you grow. And we're all kind of experimenting and playing around with this technology. I think honestly that every tool starts out as a toy. And NFTs are in the sandbox, and we're just
Yes.
trying not to poke each other's eyes out at this point. I mean, we're just sort of understanding and working with the technology and seeing where it can take us. And I think we just discovered a new application in that it's a way of creating conversations and introducing people to different opportunities and other thinkers.
I have to admit that have stolen we have stolen that phrase, that
All
everything
yours.
starts that new technology starts as a toy. And I will say that is such a great analogy. I've used it so many times, Jim, since you introduced it to me about a month ago, that new technologies, new ideas, they start as toys, and we should see them as toys. We should see
Yeah.
them as something that we can kind of get in and play with no expectations. And the expectation should not be that it's a tool immediately, but ultimately these toys become tools. And if you can get in and work with them, these new ideas, these future visions, if you can work with them and see them as toys, you decrease the risk of being, having too high of expectations or disappointing yourself. And ultimately that creates more of an open creative space for you to find ways to practically use these new technologies or these future visions.
Right. Absolutely. And the stakes are low. Okay.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
you don't want to overpay for something that you're just kind of playing around with.
Yep.
But on the other hand, they make for fun starting points for conversations.
Yeah, they really do. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about your work as a futurist. So I think we've done a good job of setting the table in terms of why future visioning and looking out in the future and standing at the doorstep of your functional role, your remit, even your vocation, and looking up and out. It's so important. But Jim, tell us a little bit about your role as a futurist. Is it an
Stake.
actual role? And
It's
where do
a
you start?
career.
Like, where
It's
did
a
you get this
profession.
education?
Yeah. So I was actually at my college reunion. It was my 10th year reunion. I was sort of standing around for one of those class photos of alumni. And I asked the guy behind me what he was doing because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was thinking maybe I'd go get an MBA or something. And he said, I'm a futurist. I'm like, well, that's interesting. How did that happen? And he went to graduate school at the University of Houston, which is where my wife was going to graduate school to get her fellowship in medicine, was at University of Texas in Houston. And it was an online program that is both online and live at the time.
Mhm.
And I thought that's so much more interesting than getting an MBA. Why not do that and then apply it to investment management to really figure out where the big opportunities are going to be over the next few years. And that's the niche that I've carved for myself. I have a boutique investment advisory firm focused on what happens next.
And tell me how that positioning, like how do you bring that positioning to your clients? Like I'm a boutique firm that focuses on what happens next. Because you and I, before we went live, we were talking a little bit about different communication styles and different types. And it sounds like you're a fan of Myers-Briggs, and we use Myers-Briggs a lot with our
Yep.
clients.
Mhm.
I'm an ENFP. I learned today, Jim, that you're an ENTJ. So you and I clearly, we have that intuitor dimension that
Right.
really does, light us up when we get to see and speak to the future. But not everybody has that type, that dimension. Some of us might be more detail oriented, or might want to know, like, what exactly am I getting? So how do you position your work as a futurist to allow both the intuitors and also the sensors to really grasp and understand your value proposition?
Yeah, so it's really, again, finding the big opportunities and also seeing the potential threats as well. Okay. And being able to manage those in a way that makes sense for people. Um, so I do a number of different foresight practices within my work. One is forecasting, which is looking at the mega trends over the course of the next 10 years to figure out where the big opportunities are. I'll do scenario planning to look at the impact of different macroeconomic events on portfolios. And then I'll do some things as well in terms of market timing and actually attempting to predict the market on a day-by-day basis using some statistical algorithms that I've developed, which seem to be working. So there's a big tool chest available of tools, techniques that I can use for clients, whether it's looking at the big picture or whether it's zooming in on individual opportunities.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'm sure a lot of your clients do as well too. And it really seems like that's kind of a differentiator in terms of the way that you work with your clients. Um, I want to talk a little bit about the role of future visioning in developing strategies. And I had mentioned this earlier, but we find as we work with our clients, oftentimes we're creating these mission and vision statements for our clients, kind of challenging our clients to look up and out and start to see the future. There's real impact in it. We do find that sometimes it's challenging to bring some of these like new age, concepts to our clients in
Right.
unique ways. But I think by showing folks that, we use the analogy, the box top, oftentimes, you can think of business almost as like a puzzle. And as leaders, oftentimes we're kind of, flicking our people puzzle pieces without showing them the box top.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
we
that's
might,
harder. Yeah. It's
yeah,
a
like
lot
we might,
harder.
it's a lot harder. And if you work for a large organization or you work in a team and you just feel like there's a bunch of puzzle pieces coming your way on a day-to-day basis, and you're never really seeing the box top, you don't know what you're building. And so we challenge our clients to, especially leaders within our organizations, to say you are responsible for really showing that box top, seeing that box top. And I can imagine, Jim, with your clients, you almost challenge them to be responsible for creating that box top for their future, right? Whether that's through their financial goals or through their own individual and professional strategy. Having that box top is invaluable, and as leaders, we have a responsibility to craft that box top and to be speaking to it almost on a regular basis. And that is whether you are an intuitor and you love to see the big picture and look up and out, or whether you're a sensor and you know the details and you love the details. You have to be able to play at every level of altitude, especially today with how quickly things are
Mhm.
are changing.
Yeah. So when you work with clients, how do you communicate some of these elements on a visual basis to your clients? What tools and
Yeah.
techniques do you use for that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Our process is really unique. We call it the strategic blueprint process. And one of the things that, as designers of these experiences, we feel very strongly about is, if we're going to take a team or an organization through a future visioning, a future strategy development session, the output has to be specific, it has to be real, and it has to be visual and tangible. And so we have a couple of tricks that we use. And one of those is that when we work with teams, we challenge them to create vision statements of no more than 5 words, which is really hard for some of these large organizations that love, these long vision
I can do
statements that are,
6. That's as close as I can.
yes, super inclusive, and they include all the buzzwords, and we're transforming, customer experiences, and, we're meeting the needs of the digital era. And when we challenge our teams to create that vision of less than 5 words, it's for a few reasons. One, you actually have to spend more time truly talking about and defining what's most important. You got to kind of cut the fat, right, from just kind of throwing everything into a single vision statement. Secondly, we believe that your vision, your strategy, is only as good as the way that you're able to speak to it, communicate to it, and engage other folks with it. And so how many times have we've been with a leader and they've been asked, like, what's the vision for the company? And they have to pull out a cue card with 5 or 6 different sentences on it. Or exactly. Or they're only able to speak to it on a stage with cue cards. The best vision statements, the best future visions, are those that can be recited in the first sentence of an email because we're teeing up a new project or an initiative, or can be spoken in the hallways when referring to like a big win that a team or an organization had. And so that brevity is definitely one trick, and it's also a real challenge for folks. And then the second part, maybe to more specifically answer your question, in terms of future trends, we call it bringing the outside in, is always the first step in our strategic process. And developing these core trends and placing them in what we call contextual circles. And we start with global mega trends. We then go into industry trends. We then go into trends within the organization and ultimately the team. We fill those concentric circles out. And one of the biggest differentiators between the work that we do with our clients, and I think maybe some of the larger shops that have these big databases, we don't fill those circles out for our clients. We invite our clients into that process, and we have a group of leaders. Exactly. They have to tell their own story.
They have to own it.
Exactly. And that ownership then allows them to create these strategies, the mission and vision that like really matter and really fit within the context of these trends. And so that's just a few ways that we work with our clients to bring the outside in, as we call it. And that's a big part of our strategic blueprint process. And I appreciate the question.
Yeah, you almost have to poll or get participation in at all levels of an organization to see what people are willing to buy into. And then figure out what those common elements are that everyone shares to get everyone on board.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, our motto at Stratfi, we got it down to 6 words. Okay.
I love it.
It's make money, have fun, be excellent. And that's it. Okay.
Cool.
Everything has to fit under one of those 3 categories. That's what sustainability is about. If you're making money, you're going to have the cash flow to bring on good people and to keep doing what you're doing. If you're having fun, you're going to have energy to keep doing what you're doing. And if you're excellent, you're going to keep having clients and customers come to you to help them out. And you'll feel good about what you're doing. So without any of those 3 things, it doesn't work. With all of those 3 things, if you can do it, you're going to be busy.
And is that also part of like your value prop to your client? Do you share those tenets with your clients as well too? Yes. Or is that more just like an internal,
we're very public about it. Yeah. I mean, they come to me ostensibly to make money so that they can have fun.
Right.
Okay? Or so that they can grow and that they can do something else in their career or their life. And feel that they can do it. I tend to communicate more in spreadsheets. That's my way of communicating, is through numbers. But the numbers also tell stories.
Sure.
And the stories can give people permission and the freedom to do other things.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, Jim, this has been really energizing for me, and I'm almost glad that we spent the first 17 minutes of this episode not talking about the power of the future but more so demonstrating how you could, these conversations can really, light up your work, no matter
Right.
what your work is. And so it's perfect that you and I spent 17 minutes talking about future technologies, because it sounds like you and we here at Thoughtium, we're constantly challenging people to spend more time in this space. Most roles within organizations, we work with a lot of large commercial organizations, have become more operational in nature. And I know that there are a lot of leaders within organizations that feel like they're spending the majority of their day in the weeds, like in the operations of managing people, managing
Right.
teams,
Right.
managing their business. And it seems as though we're spending less time, again, standing at the doorstep of our own business and looking out. And we just challenge everybody who's tuning in today to find a couple minutes a day, and I'll refer to our good friend and my mentor, Chuck Pearson, who challenged us to spend 37 minutes a day, just 37 minutes a day, thinking about interacting
37.
with, yes, he was very
37.
specific
Okay.
with it. Yes. Interacting with, and as we mentioned before, playing with, those concepts, those ideas, those kind of big opportunities, because it really, really can light up and fuel your work as leaders within organizations. And Jim, I just appreciate you stepping into the discussion today. Do you have time for a quick lightning round?
Yes. Let's go. Let's do
Okay,
it.
cool. So we love to do this lightning round. This helps people get to know you a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more on an individual basis, and we never prep our speakers with these questions, so they're going to come
I have
at
no
you.
idea what's coming. I have no idea. None.
Jim, as a futurist, what are you reading, watching, or listening to today?
Oh gosh. Well, the stock market for one, pretty much every morning. That's
Yep.
what I wake up to in the morning. Wall Street Journal, pretty much every day.
Mhm.
Also, I just watched a podcast that you did earlier with Mark Scala, Pulling Back the Curtain. There's a whole archive of content on the Thoughtium website, so I thought I'd do a little research before our call today.
I love that. Is there any resource that you can point people to that really does a good job of kind of bringing the future forward?
Bringing the future forward. Let me pull up my browser, right? Because they have all kinds of good websites there. And I'm kind of like a magpie of ideas,
Yeah,
right?
for
And
sure.
I collect things. I use a lot with Microsoft Notes. Lately, I've been getting a lot of mileage out of MIT Technology Review. I think they're pretty awesome. I like what they do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge fan of subscribing to specific channels or people on YouTube. Um, there are so many times when we feel like we have to pull information, and it's never anytime we set aside those 37 minutes to learn, it always feels like it's at that exact moment that we're at a complete loss for resources. And it's always when you're super busy that you run across something that you say like, oh man, I wish I had time to read this. It looks super interesting. So we bookmark it and we never come back to it. The subscription model on YouTube holds you almost accountable to reviewing content from resources like MIT and NASA and different podcasts, if you will. And you don't have to think about pulling; it just kind of comes to you. So,
Yeah, it gets fed in your feed. Yeah, there are
big fan of that.
that I like in that category. One is the Arlington Institute, which goes in the category of sort of edgy futures.
Mm-hmm.
So you have possible, probable, and preferred futures, and these are sort of like the possible futures, sort of like the uncertain things that could happen. Another thing that I've been listening to on Spotify is the Know Thyself podcast, and it's two guys in their 20s or 30s just talking philosophy,
Oh,
and
cool.
it's just really nice. They're just having these conversations that you would have around a college dormitory about the meaning of life. And I've really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's great. Jim, when you are, sitting or standing at your desk and you're looking outside of your literal window, not your proverbial looking up and out, but you're literally
These
looking
are real,
outside
by
the
the
window.
way. This is not a background. This is my
Yes.
actual
So,
window. Okay.
which it looks like it's full of windows. So like in the middle of the day, when you pause from your work and you kind of gaze outside, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, I'm looking at the horizon. I'm looking for
Mm.
change. And in some ways, I'm trying to get inside my own head, actually. You look
Mm.
out to look in, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny. We get such a good mix of people who, pause in the middle of their day and they look out and they think about like the big questions. I'm one, and I'm one of those, and I think that's probably, the intuitor in both of us. You also get people when asked that question that immediately say, "Well, I'm thinking about what I'm eating for dinner tonight,"
Right.
or what show I'm watching. But yeah, I tend to be a little bit more philosophical when I take a pause in the middle of the day.
Well, here's the thing that I learned is it's not what happens, it's how you respond to what happens.
Yeah,
That's important.
yeah,
And anything can be an opportunity, anything can be a gift. It's about responding in a way that
mhm,
makes sense.
yeah. I love that. Uh, what is an ordinary moment in your life that brings you joy?
Ordinary moments. I have a neighbor who is a gardener, and she just rents an apartment, doesn't own the place, takes over everyone's abandoned plants, turns it into something amazing. It's sort of a borderline tourist attraction. Like people will like sit around her front yard and take pictures. And this is the view out my window is I get to look at this woman's garden, and it's just phenomenal.
That's cool. Yeah, you're probably just appreciating her enjoyment and her practitionership in that moment, and then seeing other people kind of engage with it has got to be fulfilling.
Yeah.
Um, okay, last question, Jim. So first, I want you to think about something that you admire about yourself, and then I want you to fill in the blank of this sentence.
Hmm.
If the world were a lot more like me, it would be what?
Wow. What would it be? um, I would say diligent.
Mm,
I would say resilient mostly. Okay. And looking at my life and my career span, I've had to reinvent myself
mm,
several times. And every time I've reinvented, I've come back a little bit different and I've come back a little bit stronger
I
and
love that.
ultimately came back a little bit more myself.
I love that. That's wonderful. Well, I think that's just a great place to end today's episode. Jim, I want to thank you so much for stepping into the discussion today. I want to thank you for being a part of our community,
Oh,
and
thank
also
you.
for
Yeah.
being such a great byproduct of the work that we do as future
Mhm.
visionaries. We feel like this is a responsibility that we have, not just to our team but our community, to bring folks like you in that can challenge us to think differently on a day-to-day basis. So thank you so much for joining.
This is wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right. And I will close out by reminding everybody that we are live every Thursday afternoon. We go live at 3 o'clock Central. Technology glitches and all, we are here. That's a big part of us demonstrating the very practices that we bring to our clients and our communities. And next week, we'll have episode 89. Kevin Adler, who is a coach. He is also a bit of a visionary, and he's got some real big goals, lofty goals for himself that he just loves to share, and he brings into his practice as a leadership coach. We're really excited to have Kevin at the table next week, Thursday. So with that, thank you all for joining, and we will talk to you all